Okay. Thanks for joining. It's heavy topics all around, so it's really nice to see such an engaged audience. I think probably most people come to a space like this knowing what human trafficking is, but I'm just going to do a little bit of a background so that we're all on an equal playing field here.
Keely, could you get a little closer to the mic?
Yeah, kind of. There's a desk like a bottom under here. Is that better? Okay. So, conservative estimates place human trafficking at about 21 million people globally. And it's a funny thing to start with a statistic like that because we really don't know what human trafficking looks like, truly. So apart from the speakers that you just heard from, who have had massive amounts of research and evaluation on all sorts of things related to their field, human trafficking is at a huge disadvantage. We absolutely lack a prevalence methodology or study, for that matter, in the United States, so we can't tell you what it truly looks like. And that is incredibly challenging when we talk about how to prevent this kind of crime, right? And even more so to tell you how to prevent this kind of crime as it relates to violence against women. So what we do is a lot of learning from other fields and do intersectional analysis, but even more specifically, we look at the data that we get from the National Human Trafficking Hotline. So let me back up a little bit and just talk about what we see from trafficking victims. Generally, I think you're going to see a lot of similarity with sexual assault or violence victims generally. So any age, any gender, nationality, racial background, anything like that. But we do see traffickers preying upon particular individuals who are vulnerable. So homeless folks, runaway folks, people who have experienced child abuse or intimate partner violence, migrating populations that are isolated because of their language or because of any other kind of obstruction that's placed in front of them because of policies that don't serve them. So we do, when we receive calls on the National Human Trafficking Hotline, we're able to note just how often this really is a vulnerable person that we're talking about, and it's incredibly often. The thing that is also challenging about the work that we have to do in the field is knowing that most human trafficking victims are still operating in public. And so it's incredibly difficult when traffickers, and this is a common tactic, will force someone to engage in their regular activity, but threaten them behind closed doors with reporting. It means that we do see trafficking situations last for decades sometimes. And that fear is a really invisible link to that person who's exploiting them. And so breaking that link is incredibly difficult. And so the idea of having this conversation around prevention is very hopeful, because how we can maybe stop that link from ever becoming something significant is a great place for us all to start. What's challenging also is that most of the field doesn't know how to identify people. So you have these wonderful points of intersection where trafficking victims are touching, and healthcare facilities, post offices, grocery stores, places where if individuals actually just knew to engage in certain basic conversation and ask about certain things, we'd actually increase identification. And that would certainly be true if we had comprehensive training for law enforcement, comprehensive training for EMTs. So there are target populations that we really think training would benefit, but we're still very far away from succeeding in that. So at Polaris, our mission is to eradicate trafficking. So, small thing there. But really, we'll take any intermediate step as a success. Our comprehensive model puts victims at the center of whatever we do, and so that first touch point is the National Human Trafficking Hotline. But also after that, we're using the information that victims and survivors provide to us to equip stakeholders with the information that we believe they need to combat the issue. And then we leverage the data and the technology that we have in-house to inform policymakers, but also law enforcement and others about where there are loopholes, where traffickers might be leveraging institutions or legitimate businesses to exercise their criminal networks. So the National Human Trafficking Hotline is a project of Health and Human Services. We've been operating it since 2007, but it's been around since about 2004. We also operate a text line, it's called the Be Free text line. And in combination over those I guess it's about 9 years now, we've identified 32,000 human trafficking victims. That makes it actually the largest data set on human trafficking in the world, which is just really upsetting, to be honest. Like, it's a very small number, but it is the greatest number that's out there right now. And so we take that responsibility of stewarding all of that information really seriously and try and run a lot of data analytics against everything that we're learning, whether it's demographic information, whether it's the location of recruitment, the kinds of recruiters involved in the situation, the profiles of certain traffickers, the businesses they're leveraging, the visa systems they're leveraging or exploiting. All of that information is of very, very great interest to us so that we can better inform the community about combating this issue. So I want to talk a little bit about the way that we look at the issue of sexual violence from the human trafficking field standpoint. And this has been explored intermittently in a variety of studies. Some of you might know the John Jay study in partnership with the Urban Institute that looked at the commercial sexual exploitation of children in New York City. Talked about a lot of predictors, but it also talked about how much they didn't know. And this is a common element of human trafficking research. Other prevalence studies that also tried to touch upon the violence issue. The Urban Institute published a study on labor trafficking and what a holistic labor trafficking experience looked like in the United States. And that ranged from the variety of industries to the kinds of people that were being exploited. But I think we still are just learning a lot. And so that's my disclaimer to you all, is that this is something that needs a lot more research and a lot more investment so that we truly know what we're dealing with. What we do know is that the variety of services that we see required by sexual assault victims or sexual violence victims generally are also required by human trafficking victims. And so we're talking about crisis to very long-term stability, anywhere from medical to legal. Human trafficking cases, if they are actually going through a criminal system or a civil system or maybe a custody family system, and sometimes we do all three, they can take 4 or 5 years. So these are folks who need a lot of support in order to get through just their legal battles, let alone recovering from the trauma that they've suffered. Sexual harassment and assault is absolutely a tool that traffickers use to keep their victims in a situation. We also know that sexual assault can be a push factor into human trafficking, and I think that, if I could, would be one of the first areas I would want to study a lot more specifically, is digging into that fact. So we just released statistics from 2016 yesterday, and so we have a lot of new great information out there that I can happily hook any of you up with. But I wanted to share a little bit with you. In the last year, 7,167 female or transgender female victims reported to the hotline. And of those, 79% of them were reporting a sex trafficking situation. So we have, obviously, labor trafficking, but also the other situation is when sex and labor trafficking is combined. So we try and separate those 3 things out because they actually look quite different. In sex trafficking situations, where someone is using sexual assault as a tool for coercion, it came across as 11% in the 2016 data. In labor trafficking, it's 10%. And in the situations where someone's suffering from a labor and sex trafficking situation, it was almost 20%. And so I think one of the important things I would want you to walk away from is violence against women. This is not just a sex trafficking issue. This is absolutely a labor trafficking issue. This is absolutely about labor rights for women as well. Yeah, and that's something that we can't lose focus on, because when we're talking about empowerment of women, like sex trafficking is just one of the issues. The other thing that I think is important about the percentages I just read you is that we don't do a systematic survey on the hotline. It's not really what a hotline's for. right? We're there to help someone with an immediate need. And what those percentages represent is when someone thought that that was relevant enough to share with us in order to secure immediate services or assistance from law enforcement, right? Well, we know we're scratching the surface. That's a very, very low number compared to what we believe is representational. More importantly, that number does not account for the fact that sex trafficking is sexual violence against women. So when you put that factor into this, it comes to 84% of all of the female callers that we had last year experienced sexual violence. That connection just isn't made as explicitly as it should be, I think, typically when we're talking about human trafficking. So that's regardless of labor or sex, 84% in 1 year's time, people asking for help, right? So from our standpoint, that really leads us to some, I think, pretty basic assumptions that supporting sexual violence and assault programs, supporting prevention programs for sexual violence and assault actually help prevent human trafficking, yeah? Both as a push factor, but also because those are people who intersectionally can identify both populations. And so we really want to see increased support for those programs as champions of the human trafficking issue. I also wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the way that we see sexual violence against women manifest in labor trafficking because it just isn't very well understood. So the top 3 industries that we heard about last year were domestic work situations, restaurant work situations, and situations where there was illicit activity. So maybe someone being forced to manufacture or cultivate drugs, for example. I want to dig into the domestic work situation because we've had so many cases of this in the hotline. About 1,200 cases since we started. And the domestic work situation is particularly, I think, difficult for those trapped by it because they are so isolated. They tend to be predominantly foreign national women coming here alone, tied to a single visa, tied to a single employer, working in that home, providing care of all kinds. And most often, the kinds of people who are able to secure domestic workers in this country are very wealthy people. Or they are people who have specific high status. Maybe they are a diplomat, they're royals, they are people who work in very high power positions at international organizations. So there's already a level of a power disparity as well. Typically, these domestic workers that we hear about are working 12 to 18 hours a day. We have heard of many cases where someone is actually saying that they're working 23 hours a day. They are getting little to no pay, they're highly isolated, they are highly monitored, their wages are being confiscated if they're being paid, and they suffer very specifically sexual assault and trauma by their traffickers. So it's really difficult for these people to get out of their situations. And so when we think about preventing something like that, the task becomes very overwhelming, to be honest. But it's also something where we try and break out the certain areas where we do think we have at least policy control or maybe institutional control, and we can advise people to make changes. So we looked particularly at how to revise, in this instance, the temporary work visa system. Right now, a lot of the visas that people are coming in on for domestic work, they can't change employers, like I said. They also pay recruitment fees a lot of the time, so they're already going in indebted. So if they leave, they feel like they've not only not made money, they've lost money. So that might put their home in their own home country up for grabs, for a loan shark that they already paid to get here. We're also looking at really strengthening pre-departure education so that people understand their rights as they're getting their visa. Right? So the second they see something going a little bit off, they can reach out and ask for help. Additionally, I think we're looking at stronger oversight mechanisms by the bodies that oversee these kinds of visas, whether it's Department of Homeland Security, state, or labor. So there's a lot of individual ways that we want to push prevention strategies. And what we've actually done at Polaris is, as I said, use that data and technology. We're developing different types. We've identified 25 types across these 32,000 cases that we believe are the most common in the United States. And what we hope to do is present those in the next coming months with individual recommendations about how we stop them, right? I think it's going to take a really long time to dig into each of them in detail, but we've already started around a couple of models, primarily illicit massage businesses, so businesses that front as one thing, but then provide commercial sex, as well as those businesses that front as cantinas or bars, but are forcing people into commercial sex and labor. And we also work on sex trafficking from Mexico, and that manifests in a number of different types. But those are the core types we're looking at right now, and we'll be working in the near future on domestic work, agriculture, and on restaurant work, hopefully as soon as late this year. So in addition to kind of this one example, I think some other general prevention recommendations that we think would be really, really helpful would be looking at the way that frontline professionals can accurately identify someone who's at risk or has already been trafficked. There was a 2015 study, a Northeastern study, identifying effective counter-trafficking programs and practices in the US, and it actually found that the majority of the US public had huge misconceptions about human trafficking, not only about who it happened to, but how it happened, and the fact that you don't have to actually be beaten to be trafficked. So these assumptions are harmful. People aren't going to recognize when it's happening to them, they're not going to recognize when it's happening to someone else. Furthermore, there's really poor understanding of the resources that do exist. So the National Human Trafficking Hotline connects to about 3,000 resources, and they are vastly intersectional. They're legal, they're domestic violence, they're sexual assault, they're immigrant rights, they're anti-poverty, because that's what people need. That's what they ask for, and so that's built for them. But a lot of people don't know the hotline exists. And so we're at a huge disadvantage when we are countering the traffickers' claims that no one's out there to help you and they don't see the difference. And I think we're also really challenged in this presentation with these fine colleagues have outlined this most specifically, that we don't have a lot of evaluation in our field. So even when you are serving human trafficking victims, there's not actually been grant funding made available specifically for impact evaluation. Sometimes it's regular evaluation, how did the program do in its medium-term goals? That's very different than how did it do in preventing future trafficking. How many people were you able to remove from trafficking? And so that's just an area that we're really going to have to grow, and that's probably going to take, specifically in this environment, some public-private partnership. I can talk on a little more, but I think it might be good to stop.
Okay, that's good, thank you. So we're minutes, I know we're a little bit over, but for questions for anyone that you didn't get to ask, and we've transitioned away after our talk on sex trafficking. So if anyone has any questions for the panel or specifically for Keeli. Yes.
I do have a question for Keeli. So you mentioned a little bit about how through common conversations on basis you can tell if someone is possibly a victim of trafficking. And I live near a sex trafficking hotspot and not a lot of people are aware of it. So what would you recommend as ways that we can be aware of these issues and spread public awareness of that?
I think that I'd actually recommend that you call the hotline to describe the specific scenario so they can walk you through what would be the safest way to engage that situation. I wouldn't want you to necessarily think that you can just walk up and engage it, right? That's not safe. So I think if anyone truly suspects that there's just something off, call the hotline. Those are the people who are trained to help you identify what might be off about it and who might be the best person to then intervene. The last thing you want to do is intervene in someone, it draws maybe negative attention to the victim, and then even if you're not in danger, they become more in danger. So I think what I was trying to say, and didn't do so as successfully, was that there are certain kinds of frontline professionals who do encounter vulnerable people very often, and those are the individuals who can truly engage in that kind of conversation because they can just say, we need the private space to do so, my profession gives me the authority to ask for private space to just speak with this individual, but I'd say common folks on the street, no, don't, just maybe call the hotline and let us walk you through that. Yeah.
You mentioned that sometimes it's hard, a lot of people aren't knowledgeable of the hotline or the isolation that the victims face. So just out of experience, I've seen like stickers at the hotline in some rest areas along highways. What other efforts are there to get the word out?
Yeah, so there's states have been passing mandatory hotline posting laws. So that's happened in, I think, more than 35 states, but not all of them. And in those laws, they actually dictate where those posters or information settings need to be, whether they are convenience stores, rest stops is a great example, strip clubs sometimes, grocery stores, post offices. So each state is different. And funny enough, the National Council of Jewish Women has actually been advocating for this law in particular in all of their different chapters across the country. And so that was a unique thing that I heard about from them, was that they were pushing this, but they've tried a bunch of different kinds of advocacy models, so they're a great organization to talk to. Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Down in the middle, is your metric and report online? But I missed the beginning of.
Yes. The Bureau of Justice Statistics website has our full final report up there. Campus Climate Survey Validation Study is the name of it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes.
So the question was asked earlier about child abuse in the family justice centers, and I just got some clarification on the question that was being asked. So the reason that perpetrator services are not also provided at the same location, my understanding is that you don't want the perpetrators and the victims in the same place. So with child abuse, the primary mode of transportation for victims of child abuse could very well be the perpetrators themselves, and we don't really have an easy way to know that. And so how do you handle that? How do children, I understand you said funneling through another agency, but how do they actually get into your centers while still balancing the not wanting perpetrators and victims in the same place?
That's a good question. So there are different, let's turn this on. All right, can you hear me? So I think there are different ways to handle that. And like I mentioned, each center is a little bit different. So a lot of times, depending on the center, the Child Advocacy Center provides transportation, or there are other community-based agencies that provide transportation for the child to the center. But we are always very careful to screen that the parent who is the perpetrator is not the person accompanying the child to receive services at the center for obvious reasons, right? And so every center handles it a little bit differently depending on who the lead agency is and what services they have in their community, because as I mentioned, and maybe not clearly enough in the presentation, family justice centers don't create new services, they simply bring together services that already exist into one place. So we're not navigating a new sphere, if you will. We're just bringing the centers that already exist and the way that they do things and integrating them and streamlining them in a more efficient way under one roof.
Okay. So understanding that all the centers being different, and so this answer does not blanket across all of the centers, if it were the case that the parent brought their child in and by screening you determined that the parent that brought the child in is in fact the perpetrator, is that a referral out elsewhere? What differently happens in that situation?
So most times the child abuse cases actually come through a police department or a child advocacy center. So then that's usually not an issue. But if a child were to disclose child abuse during an intake out of family justice center, then the correct safety planning would be followed in order to make sure that the perpetrator is not coming to the family justice center. But regardless, when the child is receiving forensic interviews, they're usually alone without the parent, so that there can't be any influence or control over the child and what they're disclosing.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Just one more question. Alrighty. Okay, well, thank you everyone for hanging in there with us.